On today's show, Barry Trotz makes some comments about John Hynes' evaluation as head coach, and it's what he didn't say that has people questioning Hynes' future behind the bench in Nashville. Plus, player report cards continue with a guy who's going to be an easy A, Juuse Saros, and it comes as the Vezina Trophy nominations are about to be announced. Do we think Saros is going to be a finalist? We'll talk about it today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of the Locked On Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we appreciate you guys making us your first listen of the day, and a shout out to all the loyal Locked On Preds heads who tune in every single day to hear me and Ann spew nonsense. I'm Nick Morgan. I am a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have an aforementioned partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at InsideThePreds.com.
Before we get into today's show, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Ann, a lot to get to today. We're going to be doing player report cards, and we're going to talk about Juuse Saros. The Vezina nominations come out today. We're going to talk about whether we think he will be nominated. Big clarification, not whether he should be nominated.
Fact.
Because I think everybody knows where you and I stand on that.
Mm-hmm.
But will he be nominated? That is a different question entirely.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the topic making fast headway around the Predators Twitterverse today, and that is the head coaching position. As usual, seems to always be a hot topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Barry Trotz did an interview with Robby and Rexrode on 102.5 The Game. The last we left this was the season-ending press conference where Barry Trotz said he's going to evaluate John Hynes as a coach. Did have a lot of praise for him. It's been almost a full month since that happened. And so Robbie Stanley on the show asked Barry Trotz, hey, man, what's the latest on that John Hynes evaluation you've been doing? Here's his response, courtesy of 102.5.
So, Barry, you talked about, the status of John Hynes at the end of the season press conference, and now he's under contract, but some evaluation still needs to take place. Where are you at in terms of the evaluation of John Hynes, and is there any news on what his status looks like for next year?
No, exactly what I said at the press conference. I'm going to evaluate. I think John did a terrific job, as I said when I came on. We sort of moved 4 players at the trade deadline. He lost 8 players to injury, and he continued to, forge on with the group. And what I like about what John did is he just coached the group that he had. And I know John and his staff are good coaches. I sat in their meetings. I listened to them. I understand what they're doing. So with John, I just said, from my perspective, everybody is going to be evaluated, and also I'm going to evaluate other organizations too. So if I can improve in any aspect of our organization, be it coaching or development, I'm going to try to do that. But I can tell you the staff is a really good staff. They know what they're doing, and I have a lot of trust in them.
All right.
So much there.
Let's unpack that, Ann.
Yeah. So much there. I think that it's very interesting that Barry Trotz is exactly where he was, like you mentioned, a month ago. His statement is basically exactly what his statement was a month ago. Definitely some praise for John Hynes and for his performance and what he did. But also, John Hynes is still at the same spot. We are evaluating.
It's been 1 month
Is that kind of a red flag for you, Nick, or am I reading too much into it? It feels a little we haven't moved forward at all in our language. And I wonder if that's a thing. What do you think?
You know what this is to me?
Mhm.
You know, when you go on the dating apps and you meet somebody or you meet somebody at a bar and you're like hooking up for like 3, 4 months and you're like, hey, so what are we? Are we going to be
Oh.
in a relationship? Are we going to take this to the next level? And, your partner's like, nah, babe, like, we're just taking it slow. We're just having fun. Let's
Mm.
not put labels on things. We're just vibing right now. That is the answer of someone who is going to leave you the second they find someone hotter than you.
That's
And
so
that is
funny.
what this answer screams from Barry Trotz. And look, I think it's one of those situations where John Hynes may very well be back as the Nashville Predators
Mhm.
head coach next year. But you don't hear a lot of vote of confidence. I mean, you hear like Barry Trotz go like, "Yeah, we're evaluating. We really liked the job he did last year, and it wasn't all his fault, and did the best with what he has. But we still got to think about the team of the future. Like, if John Hynes was gonna be like for sure back next year, you think Barry Trotz would be like, yeah, we're real excited to working with him. We're
Yeah.
gonna talk about what this team needs to do to move forward, what he needs to do to move forward. This is more of an open end. It's like, yeah, we're still kicking the tires around. There's a guy in Milwaukee who might be interested, who's doing something right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your analogy. I think this is the absolute perfect analogy. The media wants the DTR. Let's define the relationship, Barry Trotz. And I think you're right. I think he is saying really positive things about John Hynes, but he is stopping so short of where you would think maybe he would be in this evaluation process, especially because he was very careful and used this very same language a month ago.
Yeah.
So, and here's my thing. I'm curious what this timeline looks like in Barry Trotz's mind. Is there really a decision that maybe he's leaning heavily towards? And of course, he's not going to tip his hand, and nor should he, if he's leaning one way or the other. But you wonder, is there something timeline wise that keeps this evaluation process kind of going? Is there really still an evaluation process happening? Or is there just a timeline where a decision isn't ready to be announced?
Both.
You think?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think maybe that's if we're just kind of pulling the curtain back and saying Carl Taylor is the guy that
Mhm.
Barry Trotz may be looking at, like I think a lot of fans maybe want.
True.
Maybe that's a situation in which he wants to see how things shake out in Milwaukee. Maybe he wants to make sure that Carl Taylor can lead a good team to a good Calder Cup run, because that's not something he's quite been able to do as head coach of the Admirals just yet. I mean, he's had things working against him, like
True.
a season being shut down and not having a team for an entire year. But I think, maybe he wants to see it's like, okay, you know what? Admirals are in the playoffs right now. They've battled some adversity already. Let's see how he handles it. Let's see how these young players that our Predators' future is going to hinge on respond to him.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Or, like we said, Gerard Gallant just randomly got fired a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
We've heard like, little new coaching news kind of come trickling out here and there. And, Daryl Sutter, like 3 weeks after the Flames were let go, kind of looked like, okay, well, he might survive this. He gets let go. So, maybe he's just kind of waiting for things to settle down. Maybe the end of the season comes. It's not like you need to hire a GM like right this second, because you got the draft and free agency and stuff to work for. Head
Right.
coaching is something where you can maybe take a little bit more time. At the end of the day, Anne, this is something and I think our friend Alex Doherty said it best. He's like, I still think John Hynes is going to be the head coach next year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just less certain about it than I was maybe a week ago. And
Right.
I think for me, Ann, if either way happened, if John Hynes is back next year or he's let go in a couple of weeks, neither one would be a big surprise for me at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it really could go either way. I think there's definitely pluses and minuses to both of them. I think the benefit of keeping John Hynes is you have some continuity, and you have to admit whether you like John Hynes or not. I think you can honestly say a lot of good things happened at the end of the year. I think there was a good vibe in the locker room. That's kind of the feedback that we were getting from players. There's a good vibe happening in the locker room. So I think that there are things that work in John Hynes' favor.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
But again, you go back to, does Barry Trotz want to bring in his own man? And I want to touch on something that you brought up that I think is really important for Predators fans to keep in your mind. Kind of the assumption is this is Carl Taylor's kind of new gig to lose this time. Like, he is the heir apparent. You have to remember Barry Trotz's hockey circle is very large.
Yeah.
It is very large.
And there are some other big names out there or other up and coming coaching prospects with ties to Barry Trotz.
Yes. So I think we have to be careful. I love Carl Taylor. You and I have talked extensively about Carl Taylor. But I think Predators fans maybe need to temper the expectation that if it isn't Hynes, it's Taylor. Because again, Barry Trotz has a very large hockey circle. So a lot of unknowns, a lot more things maybe on the table than what we here in Nashville think are the two options.
And I think something that you and I both agree on, if John Hynes is back next season, boy, that leash is short.
Yeah.
That is a short leash, and it wouldn't be surprised if we see a mid-season or even an early season firing at the first sign of trouble.
Yeah.
So there's going to be an interesting storyline to watch for the next couple of weeks or days or months or who knows, folks.
Who knows?
It's the off season. We're just riding with it at this point. Coming up, it is Juuse Saros report card time.
Come on.
I don't think we need to tell you what the grade for Juuse Saros is going to be, but stay tuned to hear our one words describing his season and hear our conversation about whether we think he is going to be nominated for the Vezina. Again, not should he, but is he going to be nominated for the Vezina tonight? That is coming up in just 1 second. But first, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Ann and I were just talking about this. Sometimes when you buy tickets, it sucks. You can't figure out like where your seats exactly are. You're not sure what the view is. And then all of a sudden you go to hit checkout and there's just all these random fees. It kind of takes the fun out of going. Well, that is why Game Time is one of the fastest growing ticketing apps in the country. Buying tickets to your event shouldn't be stressful, and Game Time comes in with the fast and easy way to buy tickets for sports, music, comedy, theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. And mentioned she checked Game Time last night, and there's some Nashville SC tickets for just $23. When the Preds get back in action, when they announce the schedule, you can be sure that during the season you can check Game Time for flash deals, people trying to sell their tickets, all of that good stuff. The best part about Game Time is you don't have to plan months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, and they have flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always have the best price. So if you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of your difference. You know how we were talking about sometimes you don't know where your seats exactly are? Game Time has a feature that gives you images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And when you buy those tickets, they get to your phone in a matter of seconds. Just 2 taps and you're all set. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, and report cards continue with Juuse Saros. Right off the bat, A+ grade for you for Juuse Saros.
Juuse Saros is the Beth Lundmark of the Nashville Predators. Beth Lundmark, great girl, loved her. One of my good friends in high school, always set the curve on every test, every time. So
She
Juuse
sounds
Saros,
like a goody two shoes.
she was delightful, but smart as a whip, my friends. Smart as a whip. And that is Juuse Saros. Juuse Saros sets the curve for the Nashville Predators. Juuse Saros, easy, A+.
Yeah. All right. So there's the least talk about part right out of the way fast, because you knew what the grade was coming.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about Juuse Saros this season, because this was a guy, I think it's fair to say he's not on this Nashville Predators team, or at least playing as well as he did this year. The Nashville Predators are one of the 10 worst teams in the NHL this year. A contender for maybe one of the worst 5 or 6 in the league when you really break down the numbers. That is what, to me, makes this season from Juuse Saros maybe the most impressive of his career. And let's start with one word to describe Juuse Saros' season.
All right. My one word to describe Juuse Saros is oven. And here's why. There's so many different ways to cook things. You've got crock pots, you've got microwaves, you've got your oven. A crock pot takes a really long time to cook some things. It takes a while to warm up. It takes a while, to get your meal done. It's an all-day event. Then you have a microwave, really quick start, warms things up. But is it always, you'd mentioned a couple episodes ago, sometimes you warm up your lasagna in the microwave and it is not cooked all the way through. Juuse Saros is an oven. Granted, we've talked about this before. It takes him a little while to kind of warm up and find his groove, hit his stride. But when Juuse Saros is warmed up and hits his stride, this man is cooking some dinners. Yeah. And for me, he is an oven. Wouldn't it be great if maybe it didn't take him, a month or so to kind of find his groove? Sure. But look, once Juuse Saros is cooking, dude is cooking. So for me, he's an oven.
Yeah. And not one of those big fancy ovens too, like the double oven.
Double ovens. Oh, see, yeah, we're house hunting right now. And even though I don't like to cook even in one oven, who doesn't love the look of a double oven? It makes me think I could be something.
Yeah. And it's fun. You can cook 2 things at once. You can cook like tater tots and bread.
Yeah. Carb load all day.
Yeah. What better way to celebrate the offseason than double carb loading?
Double carb load. Yeah. What is your one word to describe Saros' season?
To me, Anne, it's foundation. When you think about a house, you don't just go out there and put some wood and some fancy, paint and stuff and call it a day. Because if you do, it's just going to fall or just padoop right down the street the first time there's a high gust of wind. Yeah. You need that foundation. You need to pour some concrete in there, and you need to make that house stable. And here's the thing with foundation. If you have a firm foundation, like a really solid foundation, you can put whatever you want on top of that foundation. You can put a little ranch style house. You can build a giant 5-story monstrosity. You can build a mansion. It can be made out of wood, brick, and it can be destroyed. Like, big old gust of wind, tornado, whatever, severe weather comes through Middle Tennessee, knocks it all over. But you're always going to have that foundation to build back on. If the foundation's solid, all you have to do is rebuild on top of that. And to me, that's Juuse Saros this year, because he's that foundation for the Nashville Predators. And it hinges on why I think he's so important. You take him away this year, boy, that house crumbles extremely fast.
Oh gosh,
Like
there's nothing.
there's absolutely nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
The Predators right now are in the process of tearing some bricks down. They have like the sledgehammers out. They're knocking over the wall and renovating, but that foundation is still strong. And that's why I think Juuse Saros is such a critical part of this team and why I hate the idea of the Predators putting him on the trade block, because, you can make the front end of the team, the people in front of Saros, in whatever way you want. You can design it however you want. Whether it's the old school Trotz teams that's very strong defense first with, a couple of fast, speedy guys up front. You can make like a dynamic scoring team. That's fine. You can build it however you want because you have that foundational piece in Saros who's going to be the backstop, who's going to be hot and make all these saves and keep the Predators in games while these young players are growing and learning and, sort of renovating themselves into everyday NHL players. He's that foundational piece. And I know there's, some people that it's like you can't build a winning NHL team around a goalie. Maybe there's an argument to be made there, but at the very least, having a foundational NHL goalie can overcome a lot of different things, can erase a lot of mistakes with a hockey team.
Yeah, and we saw that so much this season, especially down the stretch when you have all of these injuries and you have these young players coming in. So much of Nashville's success was because Juuse Saros kept the team in a position where they could grow and find some success. And I love your analogy about that. And I think, we kind of joke about, David Poile and Barry Trotz, it's not a rebuild, it's a retool. But I do think, jokes aside, when you have somebody like Juuse Saros in net, you do look at what's coming next and creating a new chapter in a little bit shorter term, because you do have that foundation and you buy your new players, you buy your young team a little bit of extra breathing room. And I think it's invaluable, especially for where the Predators are now. And I agree with you. People are talking about, but his value is so high on the trade block. Think of everything you could get. But what do you lose?
Exactly.
What do you lose? And how do you possibly make up that ground in the next 3, 4, 5 years? Of course, Yaroslav Askarov is in the, in the pipeline and he's exciting and heart attack inducing and all of that. But it changes what this rebuild, retool looks like because of Juuse Saros. He is the most important piece of what is coming next for the Nashville Predators.
Yeah. And like we mentioned, when the Predators have this young team coming up, he's a guy that erases a lot of mistakes. And I think that's something the Predators need, a guy like that moving forward. I would absolutely love it. And if we got like a goalie expert, like an actual maybe goaltending coach, because, we can see things like, very good at rebound control, very fast side to side. I would love to get a goalie coach on here or a former goaltender and just say, technically, like, what is something that maybe the general public doesn't see about Juuse Saros that stands out to you?
Yes.
Like, is it his vision? Is it just like, the strength in which he pushes off to get to the other side? I would love, or, how fast he can get down or his recovery time to get back in a stance. Like, I would love to get like Chris Mason or somebody on and be like, what do you see?
Yes. Yeah. What are the micro talent, like you said, we can see a lot of the things that make Juuse Saros so outstanding, but what are the little things that he puts together that create the big things that we see? Yeah, he really is exceptional. I think part of it are his quads. Did you see the one picture the Nashville Predators posted of him? I think it was at the All-Star game sitting there. And I think his new name is the Quad Father, because he may be like, 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", but he's like 5'11" in quad size. So I think that should be his new nickname. He's the Quad Father.
The Quad Father. Juuse Quados.
See, look at this.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're not in marketing for this team.
We really should be. Nashville Predators, give us a call. Yeah. We've talked about Juuse Saros's numbers before, Anne, and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of how good they've been. And this season, the last couple of years, this season, we know he's just, first in stolen wins, first in saves above expected. You go back to the start of the COVID, the late start COVID year, which was Saros's first year as a full-time starter. Juuse Saros, 921 save percentage, which is fourth among all goalies who have played at least 3,000 minutes over that span. So higher percentage than Vasilevsky, Hellebuck, or Ottinger. 843 high danger save percentage, which is third in the league, only behind Shesterkin and Sorokin, who we consider to be two of the best in the NHL. Saros is right there with him. But here's the thing, second most shots faced total in the NHL in that span. 4,809 regular season saves. So what's most impressive over a guy like a Shesterkin or Sorokin is Juuse Saros is doing all of this with less help. And I think that's the thing that really stood out to me this season is there might have been some goalies with better stats, and give them credit to that, but nobody in the NHL did better with less help. Ratio than Juuse Saros did on the Nashville Predators this year.
Yes. And this is, we've talked about before, and this is my pet peeve with these awards. The Vezina finalists are going to be announced later today. And, we've made our case for Juuse Saros. And a good case it is, FYI.
A fine case, Anne.
A fine case it is. But I really do think one of my beefs, we've talked about this, is just the vagueness of the description. It's the goalie adjudged to be the best at his position. But you wonder, does it factor in what is he doing with what he has in front of him? And I think when you look at what Juuse Saros was able to do this season with what he had in front of him, with the challenges of this team without, big name players playing, amazing, Patrice Bergeron, and you know what I'm saying? Where does that factor in? And I don't know that it does, which is frustrating to me. But I agree with you. This is a goaltender who did so much with what he was given, and it wasn't the same as what the Boston Bruins had or the New York Rangers had, or you know what I'm saying? Juuse Saros, just foundational, incredible. Is he going to get nominated for the Vezina today?
Based on the odds, or what a lot of the writers have been putting out, doesn't seem like it.
So frustrating.
I mean, and what was it? A couple of weeks ago, it was NHL. I can't remember if it was NHL or ESPN, but put out their writers poll about goalies who their Vezina favorites was, and Ullmark was the favorite, of course. But then you had the top five, and Juuse Saros wasn't even in the top five. It was Vasilevsky was ahead of him. Alexander Georgiev was ahead of him. Which let's break that whole thing down. And it's one of those things where, and Chris Mason has said this on the broadcast before. It's I'm begging you, please go beyond wins and shutouts.
Yes.
And actually start digging into these guys' seasons a little bit more, because Juuse Saros absolutely deserves to be up there. I'm not saying he's going to win.
No.
I think, not saying he should, but I think Linus Ullmark has this in the bag.
I
would be very shocked if somebody other than him. Are people going to look at Connor Hellebuck taking the Jets to the playoffs, and think okay, maybe he's the most valuable to the Jets. He's the guy that's, is going to get the edge over Saros. Are people going to look that same thing over Sorokin? And give the Islanders goalie the nod over Saros? Are they going to give it to Shesterkin or Vasilevsky just based on reputation, having other decent years? That's to me going to be the thing. I think reputation stuff and maybe some extra stuff did they get into the playoffs? It feels like that's going to be the thing that takes Saros out of the running. And again, I 100% think he should be nominated.
Agreed.
100% think he should be in the nominated. I just, knowing how the NHL voters operate, those jerkwads, I don't think he's going to get it.
Yeah. I know at the end of the season press conference, David Poyle said, I don't know how many first place votes Juuse Saros is going to get for the Vezina, but I know he got one. And there is something that gives me a glimmer of hope because these are general managers that are voting on this. And hopefully there's a little bit different perspective when it comes to appreciating the value of a goaltender, also the circumstances in which a goaltender has to perform. So the optimist in me is going to hold out hope, y'all. I'm going to be checking Twitter madly today and holding out hope. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be too easy for him to be overlooked. And I just think that there are some unconscious, perhaps, biases when it comes to somebody playing on a team that didn't make the playoffs, somebody in a smaller market. You know what I'm saying? And I get it, but I think it will be an extreme disappointment if Juuse Saros is not nominated for the Vezina.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. We'll have to see what happens. Vezina nominations come out tonight. We have a show coming up tomorrow, and that I know you are very excited about. You want to pitch that for a second?
I do. I am so excited about tomorrow's episode. Y'all need to tune in. We're doing a special Mother's Day episode, and I got to sit down and spend some time talking to Stacy Mateer. She is the mom of Predators prospect Jack Mateer, and she shares what it's been like from a mom's perspective to watch your son pursue his NHL dreams. It was an incredible conversation, and I cannot wait for y'all to hear from Stacy.
Yeah, exciting. That's coming up tomorrow on the Locked On Predators podcast. I'm very excited to hear this. It's a perspective you don't hear about a lot. Maybe a one-off interview on ESPN or something like that, but you're definitely going to want to tune in for this. And it's our Mother's Day special, so yay. And other than that, where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at penaltyboxradio.com or follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. Thank you, everybody, for making us your first listen today. Just a reminder that Locked On Predators is your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, available on all major podcast platforms and on YouTube. All you have to do is search Locked On Predators on whatever platform you use and hit that subscribe button. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at LO_Predators to stay in the loop and chat with us during the off season. We'll see you guys tomorrow for another edition